I have a right to be happy. I have a right to be unhappy. You'll hear people say it all the time. I have a right to be miserable. And they go around defending their right to be miserable. And when you defend your right to be miserable, you attract exactly what you're defending into your life. You just keep attracting more and more of it. I was attracting the wrong people into my life. I was eating improperly. I was putting caffeine into my body. I was a candidate for every kind of illness you could imagine, and everything in my life changed. Give up your personal history. Give it up. Let go of it. Don't be attached to it.
Wayne Dyer was an icon in self-development and spiritual growth. He wrote over 40 books with an astonishing 21 New York Times bestsellers. His childhood was spent in orphanages and foster homes, but he'd go on to inspire millions and become known as the father of motivation. In this exclusive speech from the Celebrate Your Life stage, Wayne Dyer shares with us the keys to attracting success, living in harmony with the universe, and unleashing the profound power of intention. Special thanks to Liz Dawn for partnering with us to release this exclusive content on our YouTube channel. Enjoy.
Let me start with the first of these 10 secrets for success and inner peace. A good place to start. Have a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing. It is a principle that I learned when I was reading years ago in my 30s a book called The Discourses of Tilopa, written in the 10th century, 1,000 years ago in India, a Vedantic scholar. And he was suggesting that a closed mind is one that says, my experiences have taught me that that's not possible. I suggest to you that you change that and rid yourself of that kind of a thought. If someone says, I would like to teach you to levitate, don't automatically assume that levitation is impossible. If I were to ask by a show of hands, how many people in this room believe it's possible for you to levitate, all of you would be right, whether you raised your hand or you didn't. If you don't believe that it's possible, it won't be. If you do, and you decide to put unbending intent on it, it will become. I was in Boston, Massachusetts one time, and I watched the yogic flyers. What a fascinating experience. They sit with their bodies in a yoga position, that is, their legs crossed, and their hands crossed. And I would like you to imagine yourself in that position, with your hands up here and both of your legs crossed together in a yoga position. And then I would like to ask you, how high do you think you could raise yourself up through your will? And they took the greatest gymnastic Olympic athletes, and the highest any of them were ever able to get was about 5.5 inches off the ground. And they couldn't stay at all. They went up and right back down. These are the people who have the strongest muscles and the greatest athletes, if you will. And we watched these yogic flyers, and they had 6 rows, and they had all 6 of them sitting here. And then they had hurdles, 24-inch high hurdles in every lane. 24 inches high, low hurdles. And they had, I think, 8 of them, or maybe 10, and then they had a mat at the end of the wall down here. And they were having races, the yogic flyer races, the Olympics. I love this. And off they would go, and they would start bouncing, 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 with their eyes closed, bouncing, bouncing. And they'd come to the hurdle, and they would go deep within, and their bodies would go up and over the hurdle. And they go back down. And they go do. Their bodies would go up, they'd go over the hurdle. And they did this for 6 or 8 hurdles. 24 inches off the ground. And a few of them sort of were showing off. They would just stay above the hurdle for a second or two. I love those guys. Now, if you think that something like that is impossible, if you think I'm making it up, or if you think that defies all the laws of science that we know, I would like to remind you that the laws of science come from the same place that your doubt comes from. And it comes from the same place that everything in this universe comes from. When a great teacher in India was asked by one of his devotees the great question, where does everything come from? He responded, where does your question come from? And it is out of that void, it is out of that spirit, out of that consciousness that everything emanates. Everything is creative. And if you have a closed mind to that, and Anthony DeMello reminded us that almost all of our attachments are the things that are the source of all of our problems. Our attachments. Primarily our attachments to being right, our attachments to money, our attachments to our belief systems, our attachments to our beliefs. I mean, so many people here really strongly, I've heard it expressed since I've been here for Friday. Many of you believe that the real person who needs to hear all of these messages is not here. He's back home, watching the football games. And you are far more spiritually advanced. And that represents, the consciousness of what your relationships are like. There's the spiritual one, and there's that asshole that's back at home. Or whoever it is. And I'd like to suggest to you that that person back at home who you interpret to be the one who really needs to hear this message, that he or she or they are in your life for as profound a reason as anyone you've heard here this last weekend. That they have as much to teach you. And I really and truly don't believe that our soulmates are the people that we agree with. I believe that, I heard a woman say one time, "Oh, I finally found my soulmate. Oh, it's so wonderful. He's a Republican just like me. He likes asparagus. I like asparagus. We read the same books. We both read." I go to say something, and he says it before I even get a chance to get it. We are so connected. I said, that's not your soulmate. Any relationship in which two people agree on everything, one of them is unnecessary. Your soulmate is the person that pushes your buttons. Your soulmate is the person that can send you into a frenzy. Your soulmate is the person who, if 99 people out of 100 say something to you, you're able to ignore it. But when they say it, you go insane. That's your soulmate, and they never disappear. You can't get rid of them. They're like the proverbial turd that won't flush. You flush, you walk away, you say, couldn't be back. Couldn't be. I thought I got rid of you. Showed up again. Because your essence of what you're here for is about peace. It's about peace. It's about being in rapport or in harmony with that which created you, out of which you came. And I'll speak about that when I speak about intention. And any time you're out of rapport, out of harmony, inconsistent with that source from which you emanated, you're out of peace. And anybody who can send you away from your peace is someone who came into your life to teach you the most important lessons that you have. My father walked out on our family when I was born. He never made a phone call to my mother, who had 3 boys under the age of 4 during the Depression. He spent 5 years of his life in prison. He did the same thing to 5 additional wives. He died of cirrhosis of the liver at the age of 49, in debt to everyone, a thief, and he never even made a phone call, never sent a penny in support. He just walked out. I had my 60th birthday 2 years ago. My mother was sitting there next to me, and she said, 60 years ago this week, I came home, and your father, who you never saw, had left the house, left a note, left your brother Jim in charge of your brother Dave. Your brother Jim was 3 and a half. Your brother Dave was 17 months old, very sick. And he left a note and took all of the jewelry and everything we had in the house of value and said he had moved in with another woman who was living in Ann Arbor at the time. This was on the east side of Detroit, on Piper Street. And she still harbors resentment towards this man. But in 1974, 10 years after he died, I went to his grave and I was able to express one of those 10 secrets, which is give up your personal history. Give it up. Let go of it. Don't be attached to it. As Castaneda says, if you don't have a story, you don't have to live up to it. So get rid of your story. Because everything that has ever happened to you in the past is nothing more than what you had to go through in order to get here. Pretty simple. The evidence for it is that you did. You don't really need much more evidence than that. And everything that happened back there is like the wake of a boat. The wake of a boat is nothing more than a trail that is left behind. And it doesn't drive the boat. The wake can never drive the boat. It's just a trail that is left behind. And most of us who take on egos believe that the wake of our life is what's driving the boat. That trail that is left back there is why I can't do this. In the 10th century, there was a man named Omar Khayyam, a Muslim, who wrote the Rubaiyat. Imagine 1,000 years ago he knew this. The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on, nor all thy piety nor wit can lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out one word of it. Great wisdom, isn't it? And when you give up your personal history and I carried that personal history around with me for 34 years. Angry. Someone once described resentment as the poison that you take in order to kill somebody else. The seventh secret of 10 secrets says there are no justified resentments. Everything that you justify. I have a right to be happy. I have a right to be unhappy. You'll hear people say it all the time. I have a right. If you knew who I was married to, you would understand. I have a right to be miserable. And they go around defending their right to be miserable. And when you defend your right to be miserable, you attract exactly what you're defending into your life. You just keep attracting more and more of it. I had a woman who had been divorced in therapy with me back in the 70s, and she had gone out with 4 men since her divorce, and all 4 of the men had treated her exactly the same. They had treated her as a sex object, moved on, didn't call back, were disrespectful, didn't care anything about her, and she said to me, I swear to you, in therapy, in our last session, she said, I want you to talk to all 4 of those men. And I said, there's only one common denominator in this thing. And you have to ask yourself what it is that you are doing to attract into your life that which you resent so much. Because I'll get to that in a moment. So, when I went to my father's grave and I stood there, I got rid of the resentment. And I walked away a free man. And I suspect that probably the most influential person in my life was my father. Because right after I got rid of all that hatred and that anger and that bitterness and resentment, the dreams I used to have about him and all the things that I just couldn't understand about how could someone walk out on such a beautiful woman with 3 boys and never even make a phone call. If I don't talk to my kids at 24 hours, wherever I am, I get nervous, I get twitchy, I haven't talked to them, I got to connect. And he went a lifetime. But it was that act of forgiveness. I was overweight at that time. Right after I did that, I started running, and I ran, I don't even want to tell you how obsessive I am, but I ran 22 years, 8 miles a day, and I never missed a day, ever, in 22 years. I shouldn't be so proud of that. But you brush your teeth every day, so that's not obsessive. I just ran every day, all right? And I was drinking. Today I'm a camel. If you look on my lapel, you'll see a camel. Some of you are applauding, and some of you wonder, what the hell is he talking about? A camel is an animal who starts out every day on his knees. They're wonderful animals. And they wake up every day on their knees, and they go 24 hours without a drink. And I've been doing that for a couple of decades now. And there was a time when I didn't, and couldn't, and wouldn't, and so on. And that came about when I emptied my heart of resentment. I was attracting the wrong people into my life. I was eating improperly. I was putting caffeine into my body. I was a candidate for every kind of illness you could imagine. And everything in my life changed, including my writing. I walked away from Biloxi, Mississippi, my father's grave, in 1974. I went down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I checked myself into a hotel, and I wrote a book called Your Erroneous Zones in 14 days, beginning to end. Today, there are 32 million copies of it in 47 languages. It happened in 1 2-week period of abandoning the resentments. Vivekananda, the great teacher from India, came over, and when his devotees said, how do I do this? How can I do this? How can I get rid of the ego? He said, you don't have to. He said, in the springtime, go out and observe the blossoms on the fruit trees. He said, the blossoms vanish of themselves as the fruit grows. So too will the lower self vanish as the divine grows within you. You don't have to beat anything out of you. You don't have to defeat anything. You don't have to get it out. You don't have to work on it. You just have to let the divine grow within you, and it will push out all that has been taking up that room to attract into your life that which doesn't work. So your soulmates are people who, I believe, show up and teach us these things. I have 6 daughters, as I said. They are all incredibly great soulmates. They teach me more than you could ever imagine. If I raise my voice, if I do anything in my home with my children that is inconsistent with anything I've ever said publicly, or anything I've ever written, or anything they've ever seen on television, my daughter Serena, who is my ultimate, all-time, supreme soulmate, will put her hand on her hip and her leg out and run it up and down like this and respond. She said it to me not long ago. I wonder what all those people would think of Mr. Positive if they could see him here this morning.
Then she asked her sister, what do you think, Summer? How many books do you think we'd be selling here this morning? If they could only see Mr. Positive. You know? Said, shut up and do what I tell you. And they're great. And they're soulmates to each other. Favorite line. I follow them around when I start running out of material. I say, come on, just say something stupid. Come on. Something, anything. I need some more material. Get out of here. Serena came down for breakfast one morning. She was 13. Her sister, Summer, was 15. And out of nowhere, Summer said to her younger sister, she said, if you didn't have any feet, would you wear shoes? I'm standing there. What is this? And Serena can hardly tolerate anybody at 6 o'clock or 6:30 in the morning. She looked and said, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. Why do you even talk? Why do you even breathe? You know? You laugh because you've heard this. Oh, you did it. Summer said, I just wanted to know, if you didn't have any feet, would you wear shoes? That's not such a bad question. She said, of course not. Summer said, then why are you wearing that bra? Off they go. I said, don't chase her, that's your soulmate. And attached nowhere. Attached nowhere. Letting go of our attachments. Letting go of particularly the need to be right. I've told you, one of the great lessons, I talked about it on one of my programs, is the 4 words when you're having a conflict with anyone. You're right about that. Whatever it is that anyone is saying to you. But you have to do it in a nice way. My wife and I have sort of got it down now, you know, where we don't even have to say it. We just hold up 4 fingers. You're right about that. When I hold up the 4 fingers, she says, don't hold up those damn fingers either. I don't want to know that I'm right because I know you don't believe it. Now she's gotten to the point where she can hold up just 1 finger, you know. It's like, when you let other people be right and you let go of your need to be right, almost all of your attachments disappear because that's what the ego does. That's what it is. That's how it works. It works on being right. It's attached to being right, and it's willing to die to be right. I was at O'Hare Airport one time, and the arm over the parking lot was broken, you know, to get out. And there was a guy inside, and the cars were backed up. 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and they couldn't get the arm to go up. I mean, they couldn't get, and there must have been 150 cars waiting to get on with their appointments. And finally, a guy about 10 cars up got out. I was walking, so I was independent of it. And he got out, picked up the arm, and then started to get back in his car and drive forward. And the guy jumped in front of his car and was willing to die to be right, because you don't leave unless you pay the $3 or whatever's that you owed. And he was willing to give him this. He said, here, take what you want. I got to go to work. But he was willing to die to be right. The guy almost ran him over, too. It was very... The second of these 10 secrets, and I've got to rush through them, is came to me when I was 19 years old. And I graduated from high school in 1958. And I joined the Navy to make the world safe for democracy, which I did for 4 years. You notice there were no invasions, there were no wars between 1958 and 1962. You laugh, but I was out there making the world safe for democracy. And I went to school in Bainbridge, Maryland, cryptography school, and then I left there, and I flew out to San Francisco. And my Aunt Barbara, who taught at Hayward High School, handed me a book. And she said, I think it's really important that you read this book. And the book was written by a man who was, at the time of his life, he was probably the most famous man alive. More famous than the presidents, because there was no TV, no radio, none of that kind of thing that got information around the globe the way it does now. His name was Leo Tolstoy. And Tolstoy wasn't just a great writer. He was a mystic. He was a philosopher, and he also talked and wrote about and even lived in areas so esoteric. I mean, here we'd give workshops on them. But in those days, that was considered very far out. And she handed me this book to read, and I was boarding a refrigerator ship in Alameda to go for the next 29 days to meet my ship, the USS Ranger, which was an aircraft carrier, in a place called Sasebo on the southern part of Japan. So I was a 19-year-old boy boarding a ship, and I had 29 days, because they didn't have a lot of flights going to Japan in 1958 from San Francisco. That required a lot of stops, and they didn't use it for that. That's how they transported this around. So I got about 10 or 11 days out, and I
reached in my sea bag and I pulled out this book, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And I started reading it, and Ivan Ilyich was a man who lived in Moscow. He was a civil servant. He went back and forth to work every day. But inside of him, he felt something that wasn't quite right. He was filling out the forms. He was paying his bills. He had 3 children. He had a wife. He lived in an apartment. He did everything that he, quote, was supposed to be doing. And yet there was a part of him that was knowing that he wasn't on purpose, knowing that he wasn't living a fulfilled life. He felt there was a destiny. There was something. Lying there on his deathbed, looking up at his wife, and as he's about to die, he says to his wife, "What if my whole life has been wrong?" And he closed his eyes and died, and that was the end of the novel. And I took out and I started my journal on the USS Vega at that time, at the age of 19. And I wrote a note to myself, and it said, "Dear Wayne," and I still have it, I said, "Don't die with your music still in you." And that became the second secret of 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace. Don't die with your music still in you, and don't let your children, by any means, either. That this is an intelligent system that we are all a part of. There's a force in this universe. You've heard workshops about it. You've heard people talking about it. I talk about it. So many of my friends here in the front row and colleagues of mine here speak about this thing called spirit or soul or consciousness. And this intelligence that flows through everything is more than just something that we pray to and that we think of in religious context. And that's really the emphasis where I want to go here with the rest of my time here with you this afternoon, is to see and understand that you showed up here for a reason. When my daughter Serena was complaining to me and bitching about this and that, and she's been doing it since she was born, so she's just good at it, you know. I adore this child. I mean, because she's my soulmate. I want to get as much as I can from her, you know. I said, "You know, Serena, I'm tired of you telling me what kind of a father I should be. And instead of you doing that anymore, I would like you to stop right now and take responsibility yourself for the kind of father I've become." And she looked at me, and she did one of these. With the eyes rolled back, she said, "You want to run that one by me one more time? You want me to be responsible for what kind of father you are?" I said, "Exactly." I said, "Before you came into this life, you needed to have a father. It's just the way it works. And you needed to have a mother. You picked mom to be your mother. You picked me to be your father. And if you don't like what it is that I do and how I do it, you shouldn't be blaming me. You should be saying, why did I pick this guy anyway to be my father? Why did I do that?" She said, "I don't remember any of this." I said, "It's not about your memory. You don't remember what you had for breakfast last Thursday. You don't remember living in your mother's tummy. You don't remember living in a crib. There's lots of things you don't remember. You got to trust me on this one. I know what I'm talking about. This is an intelligent system we're all a part of, and you showed up here, and in order to get here, you needed parents, and you had the opportunity to pick who you needed for this journey, and this is who you picked." She said, "So you're telling me that before I ever even got here, I picked you to be my father?" I said, "Exactly." Here's her classic line. "I must have been in a hurry." I said, "Well, when you're making really important decisions, slow down, you know? This is the way my house works. This is how I stay grounded in my life." There's a wonderful poet, musician in this country, whose music I think is among the finest ever written. His name is Jackson Browne. Jackson had an album put out in the 70s called Late for the Sky, and another one called The Pretender. Late for the Sky, number 6, is something that I play almost every day. It's called For a Dancer. And the lyrics go like this: "Just do the steps that you've been shown by everyone you've ever known until the dance becomes your very own. Into a dancer you have grown, from a seed someone else has thrown. Go on ahead and throw some seeds of your own somewhere between the time you arrive and the time you go home. Because," and here's the kicker, "because in the end, there is one dance you'll do alone." Isn't that great? And all of his music, to me, is like that. I don't know a song he's written that doesn't touch my soul. And I like to think of myself as not being willing to be what others have dictated to me. And as I move into this whole field of energy and spiritual solution and intention, I'd like you to just take a minute or two or 5 and consider what it is that keeps us from reaching a level of consciousness in which we can play the music that we were destined to play, that we signed up to play, that we came here to play. And why is it that so many of us feel so frustrated and come to workshops and listen to tapes and read books and do all and look for advice and get into therapy and take Prozac and, you know, I have a client who I think uses lithium as a salad dressing. You know, I mean, it's because we're living our lives that are programmed for us, and we become dancers instead of choreographers. Instead of going within and saying, Khalil Gibran, the famous Lebanese poet, put it this way. He said, when you are born, your work is placed in your heart. It's here. In King Lear, Shakespeare says, go to thy bosom, knock there, and ask your heart what it doth know. Ask your heart, not here. Ask your heart what it doth know. And live from that perspective. And if you've got music to play, if you've got a Mr. Holland's Opus in you, to me a great movie, just the kind of thing that sort of symbolizes what I'm speaking about. And it doesn't have to be writing a great opus. It doesn't have to be writing a book. For some of you it is. Some of you have handed me copies of manuscript. You're going out there and you're going to do it. And I say, go for it. Publish it yourself. Figure it out. Whatever it is. If your heart tells you this is something you have to do, you're going to get guidance. You're going to get, you know, Doreen will tell you, there's angels everywhere. There's angels. This is the angel lady. She looks like an angel. She is an angel. I love her. And you know that. And they are. It doesn't matter what you call them. I don't call them angels, but it doesn't matter if you call what you call them. Guidance is there. Assistance is there. And when you move into intention, you access and negotiate the presence of guidance. And it's available to you, and it'll work for you, and it'll keep you away from your addictions, and it'll put you in the direction of the people that need to come into your life to help you. I had a reading today from a lady who blew me away. And she was sent to me through, I can't even begin to tell you the number of people and how it all worked for her and I to show up. And no, I met a woman in Kansas City last week who said, I don't even know the name of this country. I had never even heard of this country. And I used to teach geography. It's Moldovia or Moldavia or Moldovan or what? How do you say it? Say it again. Moldavia is formerly part of the Soviet Union. It's a tiny little place. And she saw a story about this, and a little boy's picture flashed on the screen of something that she was watching on PBS. She said, I've got to adopt a child from that country. It became her mission. She couldn't get it out of her head. Don't you have things like that in you that you feel, and how often do you act on them, or do you keep yourself from doing it? And she went to Moldovia, and she's got a little boy named Pierce, and he's now 4 years old. And it's like every time she sees him, she knows she's on purpose in her life. It doesn't have to be about creating. It can be about anything. And if you get to the end of your life, I mean, can there be anything more terrifying than the idea of that vision of Ivan Illich lying on his deathbed saying, what if my whole life has been wrong? I know that could never happen to me because I'm doing it right now. Just being here, being on stage, having the guidance that I have, having you here, the whole energy of what goes on. When I sit down to write, I know I'm on purpose. I don't worry any longer about whether my book is going to sell, or whether people are going to like it, or whether the reviews are going to be good, or whether it's going to make this list or that list. It's not even relevant. I can't even conceptualize it. I write because when I see that writing table and it's surrounded by angels, it's surrounded by angelic energy. I put books, I put crystals, I put everything that's possible to put around there. And I wake up, I get up in the morning and I go out and run and I swim, and I am attracted to it. I can feel it pulls me toward it. And when I let go and surrender and have no resentments and allow, it just flows. The concept of writer's block
is anything I can identify with. I don't know what that means. Because if I get tired and stop writing, I just have to reach over and pick up this or pick up that, or the phone will ring, or I go down to the mailbox or something. And whatever it is that I need, it is always there. It's like you can negotiate the presence of guidance, of higher and faster energy, but you can't do it if you're not on purpose. You can't do it if you're going to die with your music still in you, if you're living the life that somebody else orchestrated for you. So in 5 minutes, let me do what I usually take a half a day to do.
Hi there. My name is Liz Dawn, and I am the co-creator of Celebrate Your Life events. And I hope you're loving this amazing workshop with the late and great Dr. Wayne Dyer. This was recorded live at one of our Celebrate Your Life conferences. And I'm so excited that we could share this very special workshop with all of the Evan Carmichael fans. And to learn more about us, just click the link below and visit celebrateyourlife.com.
Let me give you what I believe are the significant things that keep us from moving into this level. The first of these is, it all goes back to a simple thing out of the Torah, out of the Old Testament. As a man thinketh, so is he, from Proverbs. And boy, there's no group that knows more about that than a group who would have just been through what you've been through this weekend. It's about the invisible energy of thought and making it work for us. As a man thinketh, so is he. We become what we think about, said Emerson, all day long. Our thoughts create our reality. You've heard it 1,000 different ways. The problem is that most people don't get it, that it works both ways. It isn't like you just have to put your thoughts on what you want, and if I put my thoughts on what I want, and I just get into a new age, good-feeling mood, that everything's just going to start flowing into my life because it's what I want. The fact is, if you keep your thoughts on what you want, and what you think about is what expands, want is what's going to continue to show up in your life. You're just going to have wants. You have to shift off of wants and into intention. But more on that in a moment. The first thing to understand is that if what you think about is what expands, and you're thinking about what's missing in your life, and you talk about what's missing in your life, and in your daily life you share what's missing with your friends and your in-laws and your mother whenever you talk to her, and you talk a lot about what is missing in your life, that's what keeps showing up. It's missing in my relationships, it's missing, I don't have any abundance, and it's missing in my kind, I don't get this and I don't get that. If that's what you think about, and what you think about is what expands, why wouldn't you expect more of what's missing to keep showing up in your life? And it will, and it does. And self-actualizing people, I was blessed to have a great teacher in my life named Dr. Abraham Maslow, who died on the very same day in the same hour that I was receiving my PhD on the 14th of June in 1970. He died in Menlo Park, California, and I was walking across the stage, and it was almost as if he passed on a baton and said, I've explained it to the academics of the world, now you take it to the cab drivers and the dancers and the teachers and the parents and the musicians and everybody else. This idea of higher consciousness and self-actualization. And it gets worse. If your thoughts are on what is, not what's missing, but what is, and what you think about is what expands, and you don't like what is in your life, guess what you will continue to attract into your life? If what you think about is what expands, and you can only act upon what you think about, and what you're thinking about are the circumstances of your life, and the circumstances of your life suck, as my kids would say, then you're going to attract more of suck into your life. You have to, because it is out of what you think about that you manifest and create. It's the way it works. Don't get mad at me. I'm a reporter here tonight, okay? I didn't invent this system. I'm just a part of it. And it gets worse. If what you think about is what expands, and what you think about is what always has been, and you despise what always has been, you are going to continue to attract what always has been into your life, even though you despise it. Because what you think about is what expands. As a man thinketh, so is he. Self-actualizing people never, ever talk about what's missing in their life, what's wrong in their life, and what always has been in their life if they don't like it. Einstein said it's the sixth secret of success and inner peace. You cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Everything that shows up in your life in the form of a problem is something that you have attracted into your life. You don't have to be guilty about it. You just have to take responsibility. And I'm talking about everything. The circumstances of your life are what you have attracted into them, including your illnesses. No guilt. You didn't do anything bad. You're not being punished. You attracted it into your life. If you don't own it, and you believe that it happened because of something external to yourself, then that something external to yourself is going to have to change in order for you to get better. And the likelihood of that happening is pretty small. Might happen, not likely. So you can't put your energy on what is missing, and what is, if you don't like what is, and what always has been. This is the way it's always been. We've always been poor. We've always been in this business. We've always done things this way. There's always been war. How many times have you heard people say, we're going to war again? It's no big deal. There's always been wars. There's always been wars. There'll always be wars. Why would you want to have an energy that says there'll always be wars? I don't think there'll always be wars. I think we'll reach a level of consciousness in which wars will become something that we'll look back upon and say, imagine those people. They actually use violence to settle their problems. That won't happen. Why would we put our thoughts or our energy on anything that we don't want to manifest? I'm on an airplane changing planes in Dallas to go to San Francisco from Miami. We've got about 10 minutes to get to our flight. One of those days where things are not landing early or on time because of storm clouds or something. So I'm sitting next to a lady and I said, I'm going to get up there now. I'm going to go make my, she said, with my luck, she said, I will not make my connection. I'll have to wait here in Dallas. And I said to her, with my luck, I will make my connection. She's still in Dallas. Why would you want to put out to the world, to the universe, to attract back into your life the idea that with my luck things won't work out? Why would you ever say that? Where could that come from? How could, even if it's just a silly little offhanded remark, why would we have created offhanded remarks that reflect things aren't going to work out for ourselves? Because these are the obstacles to higher consciousness. And it gets even worse. You cannot attract into your life what you intend to manifest if your thoughts or your energy are on what they want or expect for you. And there are no shortage of them. If you put your thoughts and your energy, and you talk to your relatives, and you're on the telephone complaining about, and you do this on a regular basis, if you're constantly talking about what they expect for you. This was particularly relevant when I was working with young adolescents. My mother wants me to do this. My father wants me to do this. And I would always say to them, why do you think about what they want? Why don't you put your attention on what you intend to create? Well, but I can't do that. I can't. I said, but if you put your thoughts on it, and eventually you'll have to act on it. It's like those of you who are smoking. I see some of you smoking, sneaking your cigarettes. You're so full of shame about your cigarettes out there, you know. Smoke if you want to smoke, you know. But if you don't want to smoke, or you would think that smoking isn't so, put your thoughts on not smoking. See yourself as a non-smoker. Keep smoking. That's what you have to do. But keep your energy and your thoughts on, this is something I intend to no longer do. And guess what? You will start attracting the energy to keep you from smoking. Before long, it'll be very difficult for you to get cigarettes. You'll go to buy them and they'll be out of your brand. You won't have enough money with you. So the universe will start reacting to the intention that you have, and it'll stop you. Same with addictions. Same with losing weight. See yourself looking the way you want to look. Keep eating. Have a hot fudge sundae if that's what you need to do. But put your thoughts and your attention, and don't ever allow what they want for you, which is what Ivan Illich did. And most of this is just relatives. Relatives are really good at this. Having thoughts about what you should be. I got a great idea for a book. I got a great title. See what you think of this. Your friends are God's way of apologizing for your relatives. What do you think? You see, I gave this talk to your relatives last month, and they applauded too. All right? So here we go. If you can't put your thoughts on what's missing, and there's so much missing, and you can't put your thoughts on what is, if you don't like the circumstances of your life, and you can't put your thoughts on what always has been, and you can't put your thoughts on what others expect for you, if you don't like it, what can you think about? Where are you going to put your thoughts? How are you going to train yourself? You train yourself to place your thoughts and your energy at all times, not on what you want, but on what you intend to manifest into your life. And now I would like to shift this presentation over to something called intention. And I'd like to read to you the thing that got me inspired to write the next book I'm writing. One of my great teachers, Thomas Troward, his Edinburgh lectures and Dory lectures. Have you read those? Are you familiar with those? They blow me away.
And this is from Castaneda. Castaneda and Troward have been constant guides in my life the last few years. In the universe, there is an unmeasurable, indescribable force, which those who live of the source, which we call sorcerers, not hocus pocus incantation sorcerers, but sorcerers meaning of the source. In the universe, there is an unmeasurable, indescribable force, which those who live of the source call intention. And that absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attracted to intent by a connecting link. Intention, I'm using it in a context that you may never have thought of before. Intention is not what you do. Intention is that which was the future pull that was in the conceptual seed that allowed you to come into form in the first place. That there are no mistakes in this universe. That every acorn has intent in it. It will never become a watermelon. There are no mistakes in it. Intent is built into that which manifests. Sorcerers, that's all of you, are not only concerned with understanding and employing that connecting link, but they are especially concerned with cleansing it of the numbing effects brought about by the concerns of living every day at ordinary levels of consciousness. You want to get to intention. I like you to think of intention as something that you are connected to, because everything in the universe is connected to intent. And that intention is not something that you do with your will. You can match your will to the will of God, or you can match your intent to the intention that is a force in the universe, but it is not an ego thing at all. You don't get to do it. And that I'd like you to think of intention like when my mother used to come and get us when I was a little boy. I can remember being maybe 3. And I lived in Mount Clemens at that time with my brother, and my mother would come and get us, and she'd take us on the streetcar on the east side of Detroit. We called them the trolleys. And the trolley, I would sit there and I would look up, and they had these straps coming down from the ceiling of the trolley. And I would look up at that trolley strap, and I would think, wow, what would it be like to be so tall to be able to stand down there and reach up and take a hold of that trolley strap? I could never do it because I was too little. I'd like you to think of a force of intention, a field of intention that is just 3 feet above your grasp. No matter how high you jump. Now, I can jump, but I'm white, so I'm limited, okay? So white men can't, you know we can't jump, right? So, however, I don't care if you're Michael Jordan, all right? However high you can jump, 3 feet above that, there's a field, an energy field, that you cannot jump to. You cannot get there with this body. And when you jump to this, you keep jumping, it'll just elude you. So what we have to do is figure out a way to float up to intent. And this trolley strap is connected to intent, or intention, to a force field in the universe. And if you can figure out a way to leave your body and in your mind, float up and get a hold of this trolley strap of intention, it will take you wherever you are destined to go. With all of the people, wherever it stops, to pick up that you need to take with you on the journey of the trolley. And the right people will show up, and some will be there for a little while, then they'll get off, then they'll leave, and others will come in and replace them. And you are always sort of hanging on to this thing called intent. Now, the reason that you can't get a hold of intention is because you're in ego consciousness. Now, you can check into any hospital in this country and get a tonsillectomy. You can get an appendectomy, but you can't get an egoectomy. They just don't offer them, all right? And an egoectomy is what we need. Not to get rid of it, but just to tame it. The ego has 6 components. Here they are in a nutshell. A belief that I am what I have. A belief that I am what I do, what I accomplish. A belief that I am my reputation, what others think of me. That's the ego. A belief that I am separate from you. A belief that I am separate from what I would like to attract into my life. I'm separate from it. It's separate from me. And 6, a belief that I am separate from God. Those are the 6 components of the ego. When you let go of those ideas and see yourself not as separate from God, but as a piece of God, as always connected. I am in you, and you are in me, and I am in the Father, and the Father is in you. Do you know the most misconstrued line in the history of Christianity is Jesus saying, it is only through me that you will come to know the Father? That we as human beings, having a spiritual experience, interpreted Jesus, who came here calibrated at 1,000, as a spiritual being, who said, it's the Spirit that gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. This doesn't count. When he said me, he wasn't speaking about his beard and his sandals and his arms and his legs, that human being. He was speaking as that which is in all things. I am in you. How can my body, my physical body, be in your body? How can I be in all of you if I'm talking about the Spirit? It's that which is in all things. And we have created a catechism of exclusion to the extent of murdering millions upon millions upon millions of people in the name of you have to take and believe in this body rather than the Spirit which he emanated from and described and lived from. So intention is something that we can connect to. Now here's what my take on intention, and I'm conscious of the time. I've got 4 more days worth to do in a half hour, okay? Intention is this force field, and I'd like to suggest to you that there's nothing in this universe that doesn't have intent in it, as I just read that quote observation to you, and that you are no exception. If there is no place that intention is not, if there's no place that it is not, if it's in every living thing, it must be in you. And if it is in you and there's no place that it's not, it must also be in whatever is missing from your life. In some way, you're already connected to what is missing because there's no place that it's not. You share this. Right now, my heart is being beaten, or is beating, by an energy, and it's beating everybody else's heart in this room as well. And it beats everybody else's on this planet as well. We share that energy. It's growing your fingernails. I used to say it's growing our hair, but I've lost faith in that one. Actually, it still grows it. It just grows it in other funny places. All right? Now, here's what, I think this is the meat of intention as I move off now into energy. You look at what it is that, when did you begin? You're a scientist, you look at what began you. And you go back and you say, well, there was a seed, there was a drop of human protoplasm that collided with another drop, a seed was formed, a tiny microscopic seed was formed, and that's called your conception in a moment of your parents' amour, right? And that's where you began. But then you take that seed that began you at your conception, and you put it to the microscopic test, and you turn up the magnification, and you see that in that seed that began you, there was something called a molecule. And if you take a molecular microscope and turn up the magnification, all you're doing is looking to find out, where did the seed come from? How did this thing called you, which had in it your height, your weight, the color of your skin, when you were born, when you will die, it had everything that is physical about you was in that seed. It's a miracle, it's miraculous, it's gaga, we can't figure it out. A heart starts beating inside of a mother's womb 6 weeks after that moment. It's a total mystery to everybody on the planet. We have no idea. But we do know that if you turn up the magnification and try to study where that seed came from, we see first molecules. Inside the molecules, we see atoms, another atomic microscope. Inside of the atoms, we see electrons, neutrons, protons, croutons, all of these things we memorized in grade school, right? We take the electron with an electron microscope, trying to find out, where did the seed that I first started with, where did it come from? What's its source? We take this electron microscope, we turn up the magnification, we study it at the quantum level, and we find out there are tiny little particles in there called quarks. And we take these quarks, mostly we have spaces. We take these quarks and we put them right here in this state into a particle accelerator. We rev them up at 250,000 miles per hour. We collide them. We open up the particle accelerator and we look inside, and there's nothing there. There's no particles there. There's only energy. Pure energy.
No particles. St. Paul told us about it 2,000 years ago, before quantum physics was even thought of. That which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. The source of everything, particles cannot create more particles. Dr. Hawkins' lectures, I've sat through 3 of them in the last few, all substantiate this idea that out of, here's how it's quoted in the Bhagavad Gita. Here's the source speaking. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. That's the voice of the creative, divine, organizing intelligence that we call God or soul or spirit. Now, this isn't even anything that you needed to know. The intriguing thing about it is that what you needed for this physical journey was not only in that seed that is physical and a particle, but when you look for its source, what you needed for this physical journey was in the energy that allowed the seed to come into emanation, into creation, into form in the first place. That your source for looking the way you look and showing up when you showed up was in something that has no boundaries. And more than that, what really intrigues me the most is that what you needed for this journey in an emotional sense, what your purpose is, every thought that you have, all of the emotional experiences of your life, all of your goals, all of your aspirations, all of your dreams, all of this stuff that emanates from this human thing that you're in, the ghost in the machine, all of that was in this energy that is formless before it came into a seed. So that the question to ask yourself about intention is, how did I get off of intention? How did I get off of what was in the energy that allowed me to become the seed, that allowed me to become the being that I am? How come I'm not fulfilling a magnificent destiny? How come I'm not doing what Jesus said, even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things? How come I'm not doing that? And I have the answer, but it's too good. You got to pay more. I'm sorry, it's too good. Doreen, take up a collection here, will you? This is too good. I want to just share this with you. The reason why you got off of what it is that your intent had for you in the energy before you even came into this physical world is that you moved out of harmony with that which created you. When you leave your source, you lose the power of your source. When you connect back to your source, that invisibleness from which everything emanates, you regain the power of your source. You could do anything. Intention is nothing more than moving into harmony with what it is that created you in the first place. And it's not physical, which we've just demonstrated. So, if you had magic binoculars, and you could take those binoculars out, and you could look at intention, you could see it, you'd just get a picture of what it looks like. I believe that there are faces of intention. I've just written a chapter called The 7 Faces of Intention. I'm not going to go into all of them. I just want to share with you what I believe this organizing spirit called God, or soul, or spirit, this principle that allows something to go from formless to form, from boundaryless to boundary, from nowhere, N-O-W-H-E-R-E, to now here, N-O-W-H-E-R-E, just the same, just a little difference in spacing. And you get into now here, and you look at now here, and you say, where is this thing going? It's going nowhere. Just watch it. It was, here's the way William Blake put it, to see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand and infinity in an hour, we are all led to believe a lie when we see with, not through the eye, which was born in a night to perish in a night, while the soul slept in beams of light. You were all born in a night to perish in a night. Everything on this planet was. But there is something that we have got missing. So if there is an organizing spirit, not if there is, what does it look like? Here's what it looks like. I'm going to give you just 3. There's 7, maybe 1,000. The first is that it is creative. Somehow this force wants to create. If it didn't, it wouldn't. There would be no creation. When you leave creativity and creation ideas behind you and do what others tell you to do, you have detached yourself from spirit, from the organizing intelligence. Every time you're not creative and following out what somebody else thinks you should do, you have left the rapport, the harmony that you need. You have left being what God is and turned yourself into something that some ego body has said you should be. You cannot manifest, attract into your life what you want, live at the highest levels of consciousness if you are not creative. Not creating. The Spirit is all that creates. Secondly, all that is created has to be kind. If you could see God, if you could just see this Spirit, you would see something that would... Why would the creative force that brings anything into creation create something and then not want it to live and to survive and to be and to thrive and to be happy? And so why would it want to do that? It would just create something and say, the hell with that. I don't want... It doesn't do that. It is kind. You want to hear an amazing research study? They just discovered that when a person is a recipient of kindness, any act of kindness that you receive in your life, a simple act. I was watching Dr. Hawkins speak today, and a pregnant woman came in there. I hope she was pregnant. I've made that mistake before. And there was no chairs left, and there was a man sitting there, and he just got up, and he walked to the back. He said, "Here, you take my chair." An act of kindness, okay? Her serotonin levels were increased. You know what serotonin, the enzyme in the brain, that's what Prozac does, that's what Wellbutrin does, that's what Celexa does, that's what all of these things that we call antidepressants, they just stimulate the growth of serotonin, an enzyme in the brain that makes you feel like you have peace of mind, all right? So that an act of kindness increases serotonin levels in the body, number one, and number two, it increases the strength of the immune system. If you are the recipient of an act of kindness, and you feel that, which is what the creative spirit is, kind, it's always kind, then you will have your immune system, which is designed to help you to overcome disease processes, strengthened. Now, the giver of the act of kindness, the provider of the act, has his serotonin levels increased and has his immune system strengthened. So that in any act of kindness, the recipient and the provider, both of them have this physiological reaction that they've just measured. But the intriguing thing is that anybody who observes that, who is in the energy field to observe the act of kindness, has their serotonin levels and their immune system strengthened, research-wise, at the same level as the two participants. The act of observing acts of kindness impact us physically. Who was the person, was there anybody here who there was a couple of things you wanted to buy in the bookstore, but you were like $100 short and you couldn't do it and you didn't have the money and who was it? Was there anybody like that? Was that you? Pardon? It was jewelry? How much were you short? 100? Come on up here. Come here. Come up here. This is an order. This is God speaking. All right? Can you walk? I know you don't want my money, but you're going to have to take it. Come over here. I brought this for you. This is an act of kindness. Are you going to allow me to do it? I want you to buy your jewelry with this today. That's for you, okay? It's real. Now, what just happened? Serotonin, how do you feel? How do you feel? She's throwing kisses. I feel the same way. Kundalini going up my back. And guess what? Everybody in the room has the same reaction. An act of kindness. The third of these qualities is, and there's others as well, the third is called beauty. All that goes from the formless to the form, to the seed, is, first of all, has to be created. Secondly, it has to be put into a salubrious environment for it to survive. It wants to survive. And three, it is a beautiful or attractive. Nothing is created. Why would the creative spirit create something that it thought was unattractive, that it thought was useless, that it didn't think was beautiful? I have been quoting a poem 25 years. I wrote about it in Wisdom of the Ages. A young Victorian poet named John Keats
considered by many to be the greatest poet of an entire century, died at the age of 25. An ode to a Grecian urn. Truth. Truth is God. Truth is that from which everything emanates. Truth and God and intention are all synonyms. Beauty is truth.
To watch the legendary Earl Nightingale's Strangest Secret, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I'd like to tell you about the strangest secret in the world. Not long ago, Albert Schweitzer, the great doctor and Nobel Prize winner, was being interviewed in London, and a reporter asked him, "Doctor, what's wrong with men today?"